Hello and welcome to TCG Time Capsule, the show where we look at the mini trading card games that didn't quite make it and were banished to the bargain bins. Each episode we'll be looking at a card game's history, why it failed, and if it should ever return. For this new series covering dead card games, I wanted to start with one of the games I am most familiar with, that game being Duel Masters. Observant viewers may know that we actually already did an episode on this, but it wasn't quite up to my standards, and we've got this nice new studio, so I thought, hey, let's redo it, start from scratch. You could say that our show about card games that should be rebooted is being rebooted. Anyways, let's get into it. Cast your mind back to 2004. iPods looked like this, Shrek 2 was the hottest film of the year, and Nickelback was still getting hits. So Duel Masters was kind of in the same boat as Digimon as a series, riding another more popular IP's success, but with its own selling points that made it just as appealing, if not more, than the more successful franchise. Digimon's influence from Pokemon is pretty obvious, but so is Duel Masters. You see, there was nothing more cool in the early 2000s to a kid than Yugioh. Whether it was playing the card game at lunch with friends, or playing one of the several video game adaptations, or watching the pretty cheesy anime in which the characters refer to the game not as Yu-Gi-Oh, but as Duel Monsters. Something about that name seems familiar. So yeah, if you didn't know, Duel Masters was made by Wizards of the Coast, creators of the most popular TCG of all time, Magic the Gathering. Duel Masters started as a manga series created by WotC in partnership with Shogakukan, a major player in manga printing to promote Magic in Japan. After a few volumes of the manga, it was decided that a new game inspired by Magic, but altered to better fit Japanese taste, would be more successful. That game, Duel Masters, was released in 2002. This card game was later brought back to the USA and Europe to try to compete with Yu-Gi-Oh! And make up for Wizards of the Coast's lost license for the Pokemon TCG. It is strange that they brought a version of Magic that was heavily altered for Japan back to the places that Magic was already doing quite well in, but as a kid, I actually didn't know any of this. In fact, I didn't even really know Magic the Gathering was at the time. Magic wasn't aimed at kids and didn't get the types of promotion that Duel Masters did. Duel Masters had commercials during cartoons, McDonald's toys, games on the Game Boy Advance, even a dubbed adaptation of its anime, which was altered to add more comedy elements and fourth wall breaks to set it apart from Yu-Gi-Oh's more serious tone. The Duel Masters anime's main protagonist, Shobu, was dubbed by Joshua Seth, who you may know as the English voice actor for Tai from Digimon, which was super distracting as a kid. All that considered, it wasn't surprising that tons of kids played Duel Masters, not knowing about its much bigger brother. I started playing with the 2-player starter deck I got for Christmas. For the entire life of the game, I only owned the cards from that set and a couple of promotional cards released with the McDonald's toys. I still got a ton of mileage out of them, with every lonely card game nerd's favorite pastime, playing against yourself because you have no friends. It wasn't till much later, after the game died, that I was able to start building a collection. The first big break I got was in 2007, when I went to my local game store in an attempt to play the Pokemon TCG with other people. While that turned out to be a disaster, and a story for another day, I was surprised to see that the store still sold booster packs of Duel Masters in their vending machine for $1 each. Whenever I could, I would buy packs out of that vending machine and slowly build up my collection. But shortly after that, I took a long hiatus from playing card games. Cut to 2015. I'm now back into card games thanks to this game called Buddy Fight. It's kind of the primary thing we cover on this channel, but whatever, that I played with my friends, Christian and Dalton. One day when we were hanging out at that same store I had gone to nearly a decade earlier, we found out that they still had some stock of Duel Masters all those years later, and they were extremely cheap. Christian bought a 2-player starter deck, and Dalton and I bought a ton of packs. I also picked up a Block Rockers starter deck featuring my now favorite Duel Masters card, Charmilla the Enticer. Now this story kind of has a downer of an ending. A while back, Dalton and I brought our Duel Masters cards to the studio to start covering the game and doing some matches for it. Like this one, right here. It's a card, you know how it works. After we recorded that one match, we left for a long weekend. When we came in the next week, I discovered that there had been a problem with our AC that had caused a leak in the ceiling. Now thankfully, most of our very expensive equipment was fine, but the majority of my Duel Masters collection was completely destroyed. I kept the foil cards as a memento, but the rest had to be thrown away, which really sucked. So that's why we haven't had any more Duel Masters matches, in case you were wondering. I'm hoping to build my collection again, but the cards are a lot harder to come by than they were 10 years ago, and they're significantly more expensive. So let's talk about the gameplay of Duel Masters. If you're a fan of Magic, or any of the later games inspired by Duel Masters, a lot of this may sound familiar. In Duel Masters, you have 5 different colored civilizations, just like in Magic. Uniquely, each of the 5 colors focuses on one of these zones that cards can be placed. The Nature Civilization has the Mana Zone. Water Civilization has the Hand. Fire Civilization has the Battle Zone. And the Darkness Civilization has the Graveyard. And finally, the Light Civilization has the Shield Zone. Honestly, if you're familiar with one of the many card games that use the same 5-color gimmick, you won't be surprised by how they play here. Each turn, you can play a card to your mana zone from your hand. Unlike Magic, where there are only specific land cards that can be used for mana, any card can be added to the mana zone, and tap to create mana to pay for costs. The main type of card you'll be paying for are creatures. These cards have a power at the bottom of the card, determining the outcome of battles. Creatures cannot attack on the turn they are played. Creatures may also have keyword abilities that have a wide variety of effects. As well as monsters, you have access to spell cards, which are cast from the hand and activate immediately, and evolution cards, powerful creatures that have to be placed on top of a creature you already played. The main goal of Duel Masters is to attack your opponent's shield cards with creatures to destroy them, then deal a finishing blow. Each time a creature attacks an opponent and isn't blocked by a creature with the blocker ability, they destroy a shield. That shield is then added to the defending player's hand. Some creatures have abilities that allow them to destroy multiple shields, and some cards have this powerful shield trigger ability, which allows them to be played right away for free when they're destroyed as a shield, which could change the tide of battle. Duel Masters was not the massive success stateside that WotC had hoped for. The last set was released in 2006, and then the game spiraled into obscurity, save the occasional early 2000s nostalgia list or well-researched retrospective video. But that isn't the entire story. The game had 2 major issues to contend with. The first was the internal competition with Magic. Many events forced you to choose which game to play, as Magic and Duel Masters were scheduled at the same time. Most chose to play Magic. Duel Masters was a hard sell for the Magic community. It was seen as a more childish, dumbed-down version of Magic, which was somewhat true. And even if players were interested in playing another card game, there wasn't much incentive to play Duel Masters due to how similar it was to Magic. Better to play a different card game that could provide more variety. The second big challenge was external competition. The period from 2002 to 2006 saw a huge boom in the number of card games on the market, and saw many licensed card games released just to make a quick buck. The situation is not unlike that of video games in the early 1980s, and much like the famed video game crash of 1983, the bubble burst sometime around 2006. Duel Masters didn't stand a chance after that. While Duel Masters was only a small blip in the West, it was massively popular inside Japan. even outselling Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon for many years. Although it's not quite as popular as it once was, the game is still going on to this day, with over 70 main booster sets released and tons of supplemental products and regular tournaments. Because the game has lasted for over 15 years, it's had a chance to evolve with a ton of new mechanics that would make English-only players' heads spin. From 2 entire extra decks, to new civilizations, to crazy-looking cards, and even some really cool crossovers with other franchises, like Mega Man, and of course, Magic the Gathering. Now that you have some context, it's time to answer the big question that we will be addressing in every episode of this series. Should it be rebooted? For Duel Masters, the answer is kind of mixed. First of all, Duel Masters was rebooted in 2012 as Kaijudo, Rise of the Duel Masters, which is a topic we'll have to cover another day. But TLDR, it's a failure that lasted even less than the original run. Still, I feel there is a market for the game in the West, but it needs to be something non-resource intensive and won't compete with the juggernaut that is Magic the Gathering. I think either a standalone deck building set introducing cards we never got in English or in one closed product, or a release of pre-constructed decks targeting nostalgia, much like the releases of old Tamagotchis or even Yu-Gi-Oh's Yugi and Kaiba Reloaded decks could be a success. Also, in Japan there's a smartphone game called Duel Master Plays that's basically a digital version of the game. It would be real nice if we could get an official English release. Alright, that's one episode of TCG Time Capsule down. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode, and please let me know what you think of this new series, and let me know what game you want to be covered next time. And I'll see you next time.